Hey there. Although I am involved with CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada, the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the participants and do not reflect those of CADAC. And now, cue the music.
This is the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, a show for high-achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. Together, we will inform and educate you about how to improve your self-awareness while developing systems, routines, and habits for conquering the entrepreneurial world. Here is your host, Andre Brisson.
Hey there, it's Andre here with another interview episode for the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, the podcast for the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur. This episode is brought to you by CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada. You can get more information and make a donation at www.caddac.ca. In March of 2022, I had the pleasure of being on my buddy's podcast called Safe Space with Franco Lombardo. Franco is a next-gen developer, and he helps multi-generational family businesses, and he helps develop the next generation. The topic we discussed was called self-expression and how the up-and-coming next generation do not have the ability to self-express, and that may cause some challenges and problems in a next generation family business. To me, that conversation was so key and so paramount and so relatable to the ADHD entrepreneur world, I decided that instead of rediscussing it, I'm just going to replay that podcast episode in full. Again, it's called Safe Space with Francesco Lombardo, a good friend of mine. Please have a good listen. I'd like to hear what you think about this whole concept of lack of self-expression. Thank you.
Welcome to Safe Space, the podcast for next-gen leaders of family businesses. This podcast is sponsored by Roper House Publishing and is hosted by Francesco Lombardo. Francesco is the lead facilitator, business advisor, and head coach at Bertage. He is also the co-creator and the leading facilitator of the exclusive Schoon and Masai projects. Francesco is a highly sought-after speaker who has spoken at many prestigious venues, including Oxford University, Milken Institute, and Nexus European Conference in Rotterdam. Amongst the 5 highly acclaimed books Francesco has written, his latest is titled Safe Space, Governance in Action. With Francesco's guidance, some of the world's most successful families have been able to foster a culture of safe space. And now, over to your host, Francesco Lombardo.
Welcome to another episode of Safe Space, the podcast for next generation family business leaders. Folks, we're in for a treat today. Episode number 2 with Andre Brisson from Ingersoll, Ontario. Andre, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again, Franco. This is spectacular. I can't wait to riff off on the next topic that you want to talk about that I don't know about yet.
Fabulous. So I think it'll fit your ADHD personality beautifully.
Good.
So
impulsive thinking.
So for those that may have not heard the first interview, give the folks a little background about you, what you do, and your journey with ADHD, Andre, and then we'll get started onto the topic for this conversation.
Yeah, well, for me, I started my own engineering company in 2007. It was called Jade Engineers, which was an acronym for Just Another Damn Engineer. I did that. I built that up to a self-managing company. And with my undiagnosed ADHD, I got bored. I sabotaged it, got into a bad partnership, had to close it all and leave it. And I restarted with objective engineering. Then I had a life tempest, which caused a lot of problems at work, personal, family. And I got diagnosed with severe ADHD. And ever since then, I've been learning a lot, helping other ADHD entrepreneurs with tactical breakthroughs. And I started my own podcast, The Impulsive Thinker, in October, and helping the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur with their ADHD and even their own businesses. So
very cool.
In short. Yeah.
Very cool. So before we started the recording, we were talking about, you're asking me, what are some of the things I'm working on with my families? And I will share with you a story of a founder who built a very successful business and only seems to be interested in that particular business and is not expressing interest in the other businesses that his next gen are interested in launching. So we're going to talk about the lack of self-expression. As you know, so where does that come from? What's experience been with that as a child, as a parent? Let's just unpackage that piece.
Well, can you explain what you mean by lack of self-expression to the listeners? Because I think it can take in many different ways here.
This is why I love talking to you. So what I mean by that is, every one of us wants to express ourselves. We have our own uniqueness. We want to express sometimes our thoughts, our ideas, definitely our feelings. And for whatever reason, we may have been conditioned growing up that it's not okay to express our feelings. Now, this
in the way that they wanted.
Exactly. They being the parents.
Yeah.
Right. So this doesn't make your parents bad. It doesn't make parents bad. Sometimes parents just don't know how to handle a child that is having a tantrum.
Well, it's also human nature to not be able to deal with or understand how someone works or behaves differently than you. You know how you work. It feels normal to you and comfortable. And then when something is done differently, you don't know how to deal with it. I don't think many generations have never been taught on how to deal with uniqueness or differences.
Correct. That's exactly it. So when this child is throwing a bit of a temper tantrum, and let's say, maybe the parent does know how to deal with it, it's not normal to them.
Right.
The response is sometimes out of frustration or whatever reason, they shut the child down. They say, it's not, I don't like you right now.
Yeah.
What they should be saying is, I don't like your behavior right now, and I love you. So the child hears, I'm not liked, but in reality, it's the behavior that the parent doesn't like.
Okay, that's huge. That's massive, and I think that's a lot of people don't understand, especially with ADHD or people who have mental health issues. Also, is it's the behavior that's not acceptable, not the person. But a lot of people try to throw it onto the person that you're at fault. That's your moral failing. So the key word is it's the behavior that's not accepted or understood, and that's what we've got to deal with, not the person themselves. Why are they behaving that way? What triggered it? I'm really big into triggers, right? What's the trigger is the real reason. And then the reaction or the behavior is actually just a symptom.
That's correct.
Of it. So that's key behavior.
Yeah. So what happens is you have children that are grown up with the messaging that it's not okay for me to express my emotions. And by default, maybe it's not okay to be me. So what happens in the realm that I work in with these family businesses and helping them emotionally transition is we have a lot of next generation family members that have been conditioned. It's not okay for them to express their emotions and their feelings, right? So when they are talked about, when the parents say to them, I want you to take over this business, the child who may be in their 30s, 40s, or 50s will say, Dad, I'm not really interested in widgets or batteries or manufacturing sailboats. I'm really interested in, for example, maybe sustainable enterprise of some sort.
Okay.
I want to express myself in that way.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not only emotions you're talking about, it's also interests and how you do things.
Correct.
So how I do things is not necessarily how my dad or my mother did things. I do it completely different. And that's another form of expression.
Yes.
And if you're not letting, so it's not only a parent here, it's a boss or someone of some sort of authority, is for me to express myself is how I do things, my interests and my emotions. So I find that very interesting. That form of, the lack of self-expression is being hindered because of my interests, how I do things differently. And if people don't understand how, they don't want to try to understand that they might work differently and be successful different from them.
Yes.
Oh, that was a good one. I got, crap. I got to rethink how I'm going to deal with my daughter tonight about something because it's not her success now. It's my success that I'm envisioned.
So what happens is in the family business world is we have a whole bunch of next generation family members that have an interest in business, but not in the particular business that their parent or grandparent, uncle, and grandmother may have built.
Okay.
So they want to express their business sense by doing business in a different form than the original business, which may have been widgets, batteries, or sailboats.
Yeah.
And the parent, the founder, has no interest in what that child is doing in the form of business. So the child goes, dad, mom aren't interested in me. Therefore, I'm not important. I may not be valuable.
Okay, so the question I'll have about the parent, is it because they're not interested because they don't care about the kids, or is it because they just don't care about the topic or that interest, but nothing personal?
I think in the work that I've done, it's not about they don't care about their child. They do. They're just not interested in that particular topic or business.
Because it doesn't interest them and it's not their history or experience.
And they may not know anything about it, and they may feel a little bit of shame saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm a businessman, but I don't understand the business of computers, but I do understand widgets.
Right. So, but that's a big, not a big ask, but that's a big thing for the next or the older generation saying, I don't know about that. And maybe I have to trust someone who does know about it, or I don't want to learn about it because I don't know about it.
And you just hit the nail on the head. The biggest issue in family businesses transition is trust, especially the lack thereof. Okay. I just heard, I was listening to Brene Brown. She did a talk on trust, and she just had a beautiful definition of what trust is. Let me pull it up because it's such a powerful piece that absolutely defines trust. And what's happening is we have what are the biggest, so, you know, in the succession and transitioning world for family businesses, there's a lot of talk around preparing and equipping the next generation, right? Okay. What I think is not considered is we have to consider preparing and equipping the senior generation as well.
Oh, it's a two-way street.
Absolutely it is, right? Yeah. Because if we try to equip the next gen to receive, we should consider assisting the senior generation to let go.
Well, it's the only way you can move on. So the question I have, is it a lack of trust in others they have, or is it a lack of trust in themselves to trust others?
I think it's a combination of that, right? So I have a client that I'm working with, and he has come to realize that he has not trusted himself since he was young, because an event occurred where he lost trust in himself. And as a result of not trusting himself, he has a difficult time trusting others.
Right. If you can't trust yourself, you can't trust others. It starts inside. Agreed. Mm-hmm.
So here's the definition of trust. I love this. It's from Charles Feldman, and it says, choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else.
Vulnerable to someone else.
So choosing to make something important to you valuable to the actions of someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am a founder of a business, trust is choosing to make something important to me, the business I've created, vulnerable to the actions of the next generation.
Vulnerability is a massive, massive thing. It's hard to deal with, especially with anyone's upbringing. Vulnerability is only a term that's been around for about 5 years, in my opinion, that it's accepted.
Well, and I think vulnerability is one of those words that's thrown around that's not really understood. Like boundaries is another one of those words. We got to have boundaries. We got to have vulnerable. We got to, we got to be transparent. We got to be, these big value words are thrown around.
Right. But what is it? What exactly is it?
And more importantly, what's the action you're taking based on your definition of it?
So I guess in the end is, what's the biggest fear of trusting the next gen with your business? There's a fear behind it also that you can't trust.
I think, and I guess I'm not, I'm not in the shoes of some of my clients. I do happen to understand them. So it's my belief. I think they don't feel that the next generation is going to do it like they did.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, it could go to zero.
It could.
So their life work could go to zero. And then the bigger piece, which we talked about in the last show, Andre, is the underlying reason is because their identity is so attached to the business, and our biggest addiction is to our identity.
Correct. And then the other thing I'm hearing too is that is a fear of no longer being required.
Yes.
Right.
So what's happening is, coming back to the lack of self-expression, right? We have the founder or the senior generation that doesn't know how to express themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Because they don't trust people to have these kinds of conversations, to have the depth of conversation, because they may believe that it's a sign of weakness. Vulnerability is weak. I got to be strong all the time. I got to be
stigmatism. Definitely
I got to be in charge.
Yep.
right? So their own lack of self-expression about their own emotions and insecurities is also in the way. And then they're projecting that lack of expression onto their children because they're not doing it the way they want them to do it or how they see them do it. Even though they may have a very big interest in business, but not the business that you have created.
Well, I think the other thing too is like what I'm starting to see with my own entrepreneurial journey is I'm really great at starting something that's kind of disruptive, different. But once it gets to self-managing, I can't bring it to the next step until I bring on the right people. And that's what I'm doing with my engineering. I can only get to bigger projects because I'm really good at the very small last minute emergency stuff. But big projects take too long, too much. It's stuff I already know, and I don't like that. So I got a team now, but I need them to take the lead to build that side of the business, and I got to trust them to do it. And if I keep going the way I'm going, or my thinking is I can do it all, I'm going to stay exactly the same size I am now and only doing the same type of work.
It goes back to our coach, Dan Sullivan, to the who, not how.
Exactly. Yeah. And we were not raised on that.
No. You want to talk about who, not how for those that don't know what it is and let them know where they can get the book, because this is a good plug for Dan, because I think, but we know his program's amazing. Yeah. So let's talk about it.
Well, who, not how is a concept that Dan Sullivan, based on a conversation I had with Dean Jackson, is a different way to look at how to delegate. Like if you're procrastinating on a task or you've got an idea for a project and you don't know where to start, the question shouldn't be, how do I figure it out to do it? It's who do I hire or get to do that job? Because that's their skill set, their ability. They could then do it done quicker and more efficiently than if I figure out how to do it and try to do it. An example is, how do I market? How do I do online marketing? Well, I can sit down and take the next 3 years to learn how to do it, but I can just hire someone who knows what they're doing and get it done in the next couple months. And then we're starting to drum up business quicker. And the book is either it's available on Amazon, any bookstore that you can get onto, and it's just called The Who, Not How, and written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. There was a collaboration there.
Actually, that book is a great example of who, not how.
Exactly. Yeah. Dan knows how to write small books. Dr. Benjamin Hardy knew how to write a large market book, and they worked together to get a large market book and use each other's skill set.
Yeah, and now they're working on a couple other projects like The Gap in the Gain, right, which are all strategic coach concepts. So if you want to learn more how to be a more focused entrepreneur, strategic coach, I think, and I think Andre, you're going to agree with me, is the place for them.
For the high achieving, ambitious entrepreneur who wants to think about their thinking and not be told what to do is key. They don't tell you what to do or how to do it. They show you how to think differently and how to think about your thinking. And it gave us a lot of permissions to accept our success. Like for me, like free focus and buffer days. You know, you're okay. You're allowed to take time off. You're allowed to hire people to make your job easier.
Which goes back to the concept of self-expression.
Right. That's a good connection. Lack of self-expression because you're not whoing, you're Whoville.
And the other piece is, it seems that, we're conditioned that work has to be hard and long. And the concept of free days, time off, is such a foreign concept for a lot of people. It took me a long time to get comfortable with the idea that, I'm going to take Fridays off. I'm not going to work on Fridays. Or I'm gonna take a week off every 3 weeks.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you said, we were conditioned. The only way that you were working is if you worked hard, and successful people worked hard. And that means long hours, sacrifice family time, sacrifice personal free time and personal interests. And then the other thing too, for me, like I was raised blue collar union environment, and I never realized this, but I had a money mindset of, I was basically raised for every hour you put in, you got paid. So if you did not work, you did not get paid. And if you did not work and still got paid because of this, the fruits and labors of the laborers, then you were known as a lot of bad words. you're immoral and all that. So I had the mindset that I had to keep earning my keep and doing the extra work and doing a lot of tasks that I was not good at. And then finally, when I realized that money mindset, now it's easy for me to find my who's and hire people to do it because I'm getting a lot more time to do what I do best. And that's creatively coming up with solutions that other people give up on and to simplify a lot of complex information while I research the hell out of it.
So what you're doing there is you're expressing your creativity.
Right. And I've given myself permission to it. And if people who don't want to understand it or respect it, have a nice day. That's even tough to do. So right? That's customers, that's family, that's friends, that's a lot of things.
So what I'm hearing is the conclusion I'm coming to actually as a result of our conversation, Andre, is it takes courage to express oneself.
Huge. And the only way you can get the courage is by understanding yourself, be vulnerable, and be open to the idea that you don't know it all. You can't figure it all. Yeah. You could, but you're wasting a lot of time and effort.
So time has flown by again. So based on the topic of the lack of self-expression in family businesses, in maybe relationships, marriages, what's one piece of advice you could offer around this topic to the senior gen and to the next gen?
Well, I think my biggest takeaway was if I can't trust someone, if we're talking about family type businesses, I'm going to look at it. Let's imagine my kids are now in my business. And if I'm looking at them and I can't trust them to bring it to the next level, I have to challenge myself and say, I think I'm the hurdle to that trust. What barrier am I putting in place, or what is my fear that's preventing me from trusting them to do what they can do, and what's interests them? What's their abilities, special abilities? I already know that they do things completely different and certain things way better than I do. So I've always been an internal look. Like if I got a hurdle in front of me, I look in first, because that's kind of the way I was raised. You screwed up, you're always at fault. But now I flipped it, because I still look internally to see what are my barriers, my restrictions, my procrastination. If it's a trust thing, then what's the trust thing? And it's a two-way street, man. Like it's not just one way. Okay, a small percentage, but 9 times out of 10, usually we stand in front of what we externalize as being the issue.
And
that was a little long, not very short.
No, that's good. and I think the reason most people or many people choose not to look inside is there's a fear that they may find something that they may not like.
Exactly.
And that their world will change.
Change. No one likes change.
That's right.
Change is hard.
Yeah.
Real change is difficult as hell.
Yeah.
But if you don't own up to it and you don't want to change, it's like when I quit smoking. I sort of wanted to, but I was really good at quitting until I put my mind down to it and said, no, I really quit. I put my mind to it. I saw what was in my way. But if you're not dedicated to a change, it's not going to happen. So it's a mirror check, and you got to be able to stare yourself in the eyes and say, this is I don't like about myself. But you don't stop there. You see, what can you do about it?
Yeah, and the thing, what I have found in my own personal journey, and Andre, maybe this will speak to you, is I had to find something that was bigger than myself, that mattered more than me, that drew me towards the change I wanted to make.
Well, my last smoke was 2 hours before my first daughter was born. So you just connected the dots there for me. Yeah, it's bigger. Yep. My diabetes, 70 pounds loss, had health. Another one of Dan Sullivan's concept, a lifetime extender. I'm living till 130. Diabetes wasn't going to prevent me from getting there.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Andre, great to have you on the show. So people want to learn about your podcast. Where do they find you? How do they listen? How do they download?
Yeah, the podcast
and most importantly, why should they listen to it?
Why should they listen? Okay, so the podcast is called The Impulsive Thinker, which is the podcast for the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur. You can find it at anywhere you find your podcast or at theimpulsivethinker.com. Why listen? It's so you can learn and appreciate your ADHD brain if you're an entrepreneur. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, the information I share it's all applicable to everyone. And I'm getting a lot of feedback right now. Even if you're not an ADHD person, neurotypicals or the non-ADHD are learning a lot about people they know in their lives. And to me, that was a great compliment because that's kind of something I want to do is I want to educate everyone about it. I want to raise awareness about adult ADHD and the entrepreneur, because a lot of people think just because you're successful, you can't have it. And that's not true. So we have a lot of, I've kind of coined it as a silent suffering. The symptoms are still there, but we're really good at hiding it, that it's causing us grief.
Very cool. So, well, I'm looking forward to being on your show to talk about how to manage ADHD in a family business and how to spot it. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
So am I. I think it'll be a great topic, and it's relatable to anyone, work, personal, friendship, everything. Yeah, this is fantastic. I got to tell you, buddy, you are a very smart person.
I appreciate
great
that.
Insights and observations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much.
Yep.
Andre, look forward to seeing you in Toronto soon.
Will do. Couple of weeks. Thanks, buddy.
Oh, before we sign off, folks, I almost forgot. Andre and I do this because we want to assist you, help you realize you're not alone. So please listen, review, comment, but most importantly, share it with your friends so they don't feel alone either. There you go. I said my bit.
You said your bit. I want to do one more bit. If you're going to do that, next time you interact with someone, just try and identify one thing that they do different from you that you respect.
Nicely
and let's
put.
start there.
Well done.
All right.
And so we've come to the end of another episode of Safe Space. This is Franco Lombardo signing off, encouraging you to discover your safe space and to remind you to go to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and of course, share with all that you know who you believe would find value. Till the next show, have a wonderful week.
Thank you for listening to the Impulsive Thinker podcast. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for the show, please visit theimpulsivethinker.com. The Impulsive Thinker podcast is produced by Tactical Breakthroughs and hosted by Andre Brisson. Remember, ADHD is only a part of you, not all of you.